So we're going to do that. Again, my name is Sean Petsy, and I'm taking over Toronto as our MC today. And welcome to Monday Live, where we discuss advances in smart buildings and how to improve the built environment. The panelist profiles are provided on the mondaylive.org site, as you can see. And we want to mention that, we're here as our individual, and our comments are personal, not of any organization or company. We're happy for you to post questions to the QA and chat windows. And you'll get a survey at the end we'd like you to fill out to help us make this relevant. And we have a slide deck that we're going to go quickly through. Our agenda, as it normally is to start off, first of all, mentioning this month's theme, and that is smart building enablers. Pretty wide, but also in a way very focused on the types of things we need to do to help buildings be smart. So our agenda is that we open with some new trends and comments from all of the members here. And then we're going to go into smart building enablers. We've got a guest speaker today, Nicolas Waern, who's going to talk to us about some of those enablers. And so with that, Ken Sinclair, you've submitted some comments about what you see happening out there in the industry. So I'll let you comment for a few minutes on your slide.
Okay, thanks. Okay, we're hard at going to get our July issue out, navigating the next new. We're having a lot of fun with it. Folks are jumping in and giving us their thoughts. I think we've been joking about kissing the devil and trying to get to know these unknowns a little bit better. And I actually love just a Shopify post went across my desk, and I kind of watched that because my youngest daughter is employed by them. And they actually started the whole Shopify thing from trying to sell snowboards and found that the commerce system was woefully inadequate. So they invented their own. And, of course, they're doing very well these days in a short time. So I think, and ironically enough, the original snowboard company was called Snow Devil. So a little bit of a play on that as well. But our devil is the need to know what, is the need to do what has never been done before. And I think that's what we're at right here. Is we're all traditionalists, and we need to investigate user experience. We need to investigate automated or artificial intelligence. I always have trouble with that word, and I don't like it. The word artificial. I like it as added intelligence or something, but anyway, we've also I've given you a sneak preview of what's coming up in the July issue. And Suha has given us a great article called Taming an Unborn Beast, and it was referring to AI, so I thought it might be a bit suitable to what we're doing. So I've allowed you to take a look at that. Looking forward to what our contributing editor, Nicolas, has to say. He always has great insights, so I'm looking forward to that.
Okay.
About it.
Hey,
Right.
Ken, I don't know if you know, but there is a term called artificial intelligence. You know what that is? People.
No, people. No, I hadn't heard that one. That's a good one.
AI.
I happen to agree with you, Ken. I think it is added intelligence. And hopefully that'll come out in our discussion today. All right, next commentary. Oh, that's from me. Yeah, I identified two news stories I thought were important. I've been, trying to bring up articles on sustainable buildings because that should be one of the drivers for most of the products we sell here. An interesting article this week: are sustainable buildings really more valuable on PropMoto? Spoiler alert, they are, but they talk about a lot of the factors involved in that. But yeah, I think it's one more validation. We've seen others from the Carbon War Room, from BOMA, and others that demonstrate we have two buildings that are identical. The more efficient one has a higher asset value, and that increase in asset value is substantially greater than the energy savings that might have come on the, you look for in your ROI of your investments in energy efficiency. Another one that I if I can recommend people who are kind of in our world read, I would suggest this next one: Why Companies Are Data Driven. I guess I'd put it this way, right? Most of us involved here are looking at different technologies, and data is central to them. And we struggle and from time to time bemoan the fact that organizations, why are they reluctant if it can be shown so clearly that using data can improve their buildings? And this article has nothing to do with our industry. It's more depressing than that. It has to do with why the world as a whole doesn't adopt a more data-driven approach. So it's not a happy read. Anyways, I'll turn it over to the next person. Ano, your turn.
Thanks. So was there any conclusion out of that article, John, or should we go read it?
The conclusion is it's a fundamental challenge of how organizations work today, how human beings work today, and right. It's just too easy to stay with existing practices. There's numerous barriers. It's a short read too. It's only 3 or 4 minutes.
Okay.
I really suggest everybody read it because it encompasses the breadth of why it's a problem in society, not just the things we're trying to accomplish.
Okay, cool. Yeah, two articles I found interesting this week. Well, an article and a webinar I was on. The one from Apple, Tim Cook apparently has sent an email out to everybody saying he wants everyone back in the office by September, which is kind of a bit of a 180 on their previous model. Although what he does say, it's not full. It says at least 3 days, and then you could do 2 days. And the article that Medium as well, the article that referenced it said, as it says there, perhaps Cook could be embarrassed if they invested vast resources in their flashy new saucer headquarters and then told everyone, no, you don't have to. Probably not the best shape. But it is an interesting quick read on that. And the other one, which was a little webinar I attended on earlier in the last week, from Orlando, the city of Orlando, and they're actually doing some significant stuff in smart city initiatives. It's really compelling. If you get a chance, have a look at that link. And they are looking at it from all sorts of aspects, but they did end up finishing up on a digital twin and such smart building technologies as applications within the Orlando. One of the things that I took away from it was how well thought out their use cases were for why they should be doing this. And so, I thought first off would just be a high level, city level, it's a good idea type of thing. But they actually went into some interesting use cases that were very compelling. So well thought out.
That's interesting. So, yeah, I would agree. So much of the smart city stuff you read is very aspirational and fluffy, right?
Right. Right.
I think people are searching for more specifics, so I'll follow that one up. All right, let's see if we have any others submitted. I'm not aware, Roger, if you did submit updates to your slides for this week.
No, I didn't get time today, but one of the things I was interested in and to get some views from you guys really is that I saw last week that Sacramento is now joining 45 other cities that are just going for electrification by 2023. And I'm just wondering, in the US there, we couldn't actually support that demand if everyone went for electrification. And clearly you got solar and other alternatives there over in sort of California, but I wondered how far you guys would see that stretching across the US, because they're saying it's 2023. It's initially only 3-story buildings, but it probably will be bigger than that afterward by 2026.
I'll offer 2 comments for myself and then others speak. First of all, the United States is so diverse. I don't see similar level of momentum here where we are in Virginia, although I do see progress. The other thing I'd mention for people who may not know is that the Sacramento Municipal Utility District has been a leader in energy efficiency since I ever met them. I lived out there for a while in the early 80s, and they were doing demand response with 900 megahertz signals to relays on rooftop air conditioning in 83, 84. They've been really early in being aggressive about energy efficiency. So it's called smart.
Yeah, I'll echo that, John. We got involved with them probably in the early 2010s, 2012 timeframe. Still, Sacramento still very progressive on energy usage, demand response, energy generation. Bunch of some very smart guys, and they've been on that track for a while.
Yeah.
I treat them as leading edge as far as, how to do DR.
Yeah, quick side story on that. They sponsored one of the very first CEM certification programs. They opened up their facilities and contributed. That's where I got my training in CEM back in 1984. So that's gives you some ideas of how early they've been. But other than that, Roger, my answer is it's a mixed bag. I don't know if anybody else wants to throw in their comments on that.
Yeah, there's a document, even the building electrification technology roadmaps. I mean, San Francisco and San Jose, Oakland, they're all already doing this apparently.
Okay, so and Steve, did you have any comments for us today? I didn't see an updated slide. If I
No,
okay,
unfortunately, no.
okay, all right, no problem, no problem. So, the topic for the month is smart building enablers, and that brings together a lot of different technologies and business issues that we've talked about. But today we've got a panelist joining us, Nicolas Waern, who is going to talk about some enablers, specifically around the topic of AI. So I'm going to see if I can accomplish what I need to do here and promote Nicolas to a panelist. And we'll see if he appears. All right, we've just added one. So Nicolas, check to see that you are your camera is on and your microphone is on. You should be able to contribute to the discussion and should show up on screen.
And John, you can unshare your screen now.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate that. Reminder, Bill. All right. So, Nicolas, first thing I'm going to ask you to do, instead of trying to read a bio, I'm going to ask you to do it. Give us a little background on who you are. Why the heck are you here? What are you involved in?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? I mean, it's all thanks to Ken Sinclair. Fortunately, unfortunately, depends to be seen. But my background is in not in building automation, not in HVAC, not in BES and BMS, really. It's actually in strategy and innovation. Well, first I was a logistics assistant warehouse manager, then in sales, then studying strategy innovation, both here in Sweden, but also in South Korea and Switzerland, in some of the best universities, and then studied IT management at a master level to understand, first the fluffy stuff you said, John Petsy, right? About the smart city stuff, these kind of things. That's how I started, how countries do business together, all these kind of things. And then why Kodak failed and disruptive technologies and all these kind of things. And then I studied, again, like IT management to understand how culture, processes, organizations, people, existing systems, and roles play a part in making the decisions, which again alludes back to not data driven, because we got a lot of people in organizations, and a lot of organizations are people driven, and they're clinging to the past instead of looking towards the future, which of course everyone sort of knows about. I think that has anything to do with any big company or even small company. So after that, I actually said yes to a lot of different things. I invested in an audiobook company in Nigeria. I was also having a import-export company with some friends. I had my own web agency, so working pretty closely with developers the last, 8 years now. And at the same time, working as a management consultant for different large organizations such as Volvo Cars, being responsible for master data management, data quality as a service, understanding the plethora of applications for these large companies. And again, they're not really data-driven. It depends on how you see it, but they have no idea what data quality means at scale, and they have so many different solutions that they can't keep up, right? Understanding all of these kind of things. But then 7 years ago, I stumbled into the building automation arena at a conference. I talked to a guy who was based in Iceland, and he showed me on his phone in Finland, where I also met Ken the year after, I think, or a couple of years after, that he could see on his phone when someone has opened up the refrigerator, turn on and off the lights. And this was, I think, 6 or 7 years ago. So it's like the beginning of the IoT hype, I would say, right? And that was only through power line communication. So you could just install like a Raspberry Pi Edge gateway, having BACnet, then using BACnet web services to go in and out of buildings through a RESTful API, OAuth authentication, pretty, early on, depends on how you see it. And I was sort of hooked when I learned more about buildings, the energy efficiency aspect, or like the lack of energy efficiency aspect, I would say, and the possibilities to have a company or to pursue like a global landscape of buildings, because that's been my dream, to solve all the problems in the world and have a company that operates in all countries in the world. So I think like buildings would be a pretty nice fit to do these kind of things and create an app store for buildings. That was my original idea when I understood, BACnet is sort of prevalent when it comes to commercial real estate. If you have one API to the building, that sort of can enable an app store concept. So that's how it started. And pretty soon I was writing for, the BACnet International Journal. I was becoming the CEO of that IoT company. So working my way towards smart buildings, and definitely with the help of Ken Sinclair, and of course you, John, as well, listening to hear you think about, all buildings should be like websites, right? It should be easy to uninstall stuff or install stuff. And, it has to be much, much easier when it comes to interoperability. Been a speaker at BACnet, HVAC, smart buildings, all these kind of things, but then also stumbling into the whole real estate lifecycle, because I understood like the buildings that exist and also the ones that are being built are not necessarily smart from the start, right? So I've been working with construction companies, large general contractors, for the last couple of years, also working for BIM companies. So that's how I stumbled into digital twins. So I was speaking at a BIM conference about IoT and BIM, and just thinking, if you combine BIM, for those of you who might not know what it is, it's building information models. So you have that side, which is again like a fraction of the total data that exists in a construction project. So it's not a digital twin per se, but it's a version of a building information model. If you combine that with IoT, you have sort of an onset of something like a digital twin. So that got me started 3 years ago. And then I've been working my through the whole real estate life cycle, working with architects, integrators, all these kind of things. And then, of course, again, like understanding that technology is still an afterthought, and technology is not being viewed as an enabler at all. Maybe it's none, or as a utility, or people are dependent on it, but rarely seen as an enabler, and not at all as in digital DNA, which most companies that are started today, that you have to have that. It's not technology as an enabler, it is the business. So we got banks that are turning into software companies that happens to deal with money, and retail companies that deals with shoes, but it's a software company nonetheless. So that's basically how it is. So right now I'm in the Digital Twin Consortium. I am helping, companies in the mobility sector, digital twin companies moving into the automotive side. I'm co-chairing the manufacturing digital twin, co-chairing manufacturing working group at the Digital Twin Consortium, and working on smart cities, smart buildings, national and as well as European strategies for sustainability purposes, and also helping AI companies in healthcare. And I got a pretty good understanding of what has been done, what is being done, and probably what will be done, I think. And I think that's why I'm here, to talk a little about this stuff, not only related to buildings, but also what's happening in manufacturing, maybe healthcare, for large and small organizations. And I'm not an expert in AI, but I pretty know much, talking to a lot of companies working with AI, what the challenges might be and how to sort of think about it. And we can't think about an API first strategy. For those who read the article, we have to think about AI first, and sort of like to cater to it now. Otherwise, we risk falling into the trap that all these large companies are in right now, with data swamps, data lakes turning into data swamps, where you don't have metadata tagging and all these kind of things, right? But that said, I think John and Haystack, Brick Schema, and everything that is happening in the building automation space or IoT space is fantastic, and I think it's that's the right way to go. But again, from a smart building and a smart city perspective, you have different digital twins, right? You have different areas of digital twins, and it's not only that everything has to become interoperable in one industry; it's that when you're looking at it from a fluffy smart city perspective, everything needs to be able to talk to each other in a standardized way. And I think that's sort of where a lot of companies and initiatives are struggling. And that's sort of what I'm focusing on, basically solving the integration challenges. And I'm like working with a university right now, where I know for a fact that working with graph-based data models, and these kind of things, to have a mathematical representation of the reality as we know it. And I think building automation, especially in the US, are really catered to do great things. especially because of Haystack and Brick Schema, and the new addition to Haystack, of course, where you have more spatial assets and more relationships than it was before. And I think it's destined to be a really good place to be in, to be honest.
All right. Well, that's a wide expanse of experience and technologies. But one of the topics we had talked to you about speaking to, and you mentioned among that a lot of them you covered, is AI. So
Yeah.
tell us what you are seeing from your point of view. I think for myself and a lot of the others, there's a lot of hype about it.
Yeah.
A lot more hype than deployments that are visible and understandable. So maybe you want to comment on AI for us?
Yeah, sure. And I think, I listened to some, a lot of these consortium and working groups, and I think there are a lot of solutions right now that are targeting or like have AI built in, targeting silo-specific things in terms of energy efficiency, Brainbox AI, and similar companies like it. But if I'm looking at, the sort of maturity level from sort of like more a national perspective, I can definitely see that, China, Asia, they have more of societal fabric where everything is more and more connected. They have much more data, and they've went through this, with an ambition over the last almost a decade, right? And I think, AI it's again what Ken Sinclair said. I actually think AI as a standalone something will revolutionize a lot of the things that we are doing and will do. And again, I think it works on the backbone of a lot of the things that we take for granted today, right? And I think like the difference, I don't know if I recommended it on my podcast, but it's a book and also you can listen to it. It's How to Compete in the Age of AI. So that's a pretty good story, or like a good book. And they're just going to take that example, John, so bear with me a little bit more. So what they're saying is that if you take Bank of America as an example, I think they have 112,000 employees servicing 70 million customers in the US. And then if you look at Ant Financial, which is this entity that, it was a debacle, I think, last year when they were supposed to do an IPO in the US at the NASDAQ. It failed because one of the founders, who's also the founder of Alibaba, he sort of spoke in turn about the Chinese government. It didn't go so well, so they messed it up a little bit. But Ant Financial is then, similar to a bank, but it's more of a digital DNA, right? So they're able to service, 720 million people all across Asia with 11,000 people. So if you take that ratio, so again, like 112,000 people to service 70 million in one country, or you have 11,000 people servicing 720 million over, so like the Pan-Pacific with 11,000 people. So by that definition, if you would, service the same amount of people with an Ant Financial, so like organizational structure where you thought about, AI first, externalizing APIs, more like a, digital backbone, and not just as an enabler, but in the DNA, then you would only need, 1,000 people to service the 70 million, that Bank of America has today. So going back to sort of like the data-driven companies, it's not that Bank of America and these companies know or don't know about this, right? It's just that for them to get rid of 111,000 people and to be able to compete then with Ant Financial or new fintech startups or whatever that is, they can't do that because of unions, mass unemployment, or whatever that is, right? It's impossible. It's virtually impossible. So I think with AI, going back to that topic, there's of course use the rich metadata, and it's Haystack and it's Brick Schema and all these kind of things that we're familiar with in the building automation realm. But if you think about it, it's if you want to get started, what do you need, right? Of course you need some data, but you need people. You need domain experts, and you usually need some, data scientists or data engineers that, structure this pipeline. And how are we explaining, traditional industries to data scientists or to domain experts? I think that's one of the problems. So that's sort of to see like some, linear equation or, relationship with the digital twin. So the digital twin is not, I think what John, you mentioned something I saw on LinkedIn, that is, the BAS graphics, right? Or something like that, it's more or less, if you have a building, the digital twin represents the whole building. So you're able to explain, if I change this valve over here or this set point, this is how it will affect the system. If someone enters the room here, this is how it will affect the system. And I can explain it to domain experts to my daughter, who's not a domain expert, but I can still explain it to her. She's 7 years old, right? So I think it's again, it's a new mindset combined with modern technology, and it's not that different. I have this idea of invite to innovate, and I think that's again the need to be able to do that is if you just have a well-defined enough problem of a building, a city, whatever that is, then you can invite someone to work on that problem, irrespectively of where that is. I mean, you're here in this meeting. You're probably, hopefully maybe the biggest brains, building automation has to offer, right? If I would have a project here in Sweden, I need your help, what would it be the best way to get you in there? And that again goes a little bit back to digital twins, where I see digital twins have two sides. One is for people, for me to be able to explain to you of these 3 pilot schools that I'm working on, how everything fits together. And the other side is for systems. Do I have an API to that building, to the systems with rich enough metadata that also, AI can work with this, right? So it has to be both sides. You can't just, especially for existing companies, existing buildings, you need to have both of them to be able to explain and invite the people that are necessary to work on these kind of things. Because again, it's the skill shortage gap. A lot of the people have a lot of knowledge about the buildings, about the industry as such. And I think, digital twins can definitely help to articulate this problem. And you have to go at it again with an AI first mindset. Because if you go back to these companies that can do stuff 99% better, 99% faster, we have to cater to that now. Otherwise, countries, buildings, organizations risk of falling behind even more so than what they are today. So I don't know if that, it's not so much about AI, but I think, it's more about people, to be honest, at this stage, to be able to invite the ones that know AI to the ones that don't, and for them to meet somewhere and to be able to explain these things to each other. And also, of course, cater to the data-rich side, which I think, again, the building automation side has done, or no, it's sort of positioned at least to have an attack point, which is very, very different from what I see here in Sweden, where everything is at the Modbus level. No one knows about BACnet. There is no interoperability to be seen whatsoever. So we got a more of an uphill battle than I think, a BACnet building where you have standardized data, where you can go in and do a Yabi scan or whatever and get data out and then provide relationships and metadata tagging in a way that would much, much easier for the future. If that makes sense. Again, just ask me questions so I don't just rant here. But.
Well, Anto joined us back, and I'm glad to see that he saved me from continuing to be the moderator and running this platform that I'm not that used to. And Tracy's with us as well. But yeah, so I think with that introduction, it would be a great time to for the other panelists to throw some questions out there for Nicolas.
Nicolas, let me ask a question, Roger. Yeah. There's lots of technology now. Okay, you mentioned lots of it, digital twins, we got AI, and there's been billions actually thrown into startups. Construction has been, miles behind lots of the other industry, fintechs and stuff. But we're all still very much in the push mode. It's still people with the technology pushing it. Do you actually, we're going to need both sides where the customers are pulling. Are you actually seeing much yet from the customer, whoever that may be, whether it's the owner or the REITs or whoever that may be, or the occupier? Are you seeing much sort of pull as well as, all the people with the technology pushing?
Yes and no. I think there's a perfect storm here when it comes to, after COVID, getting people back to buildings, rules, regulations. And I think you talked about California before as well, where they have this initiative that everything is going to be EV aligned. I think, I don't know, in 2025, right? It was pretty early on, I think. That sets, initiatives, or I call it requirements on the infrastructure, which of course, California is not ready for, or not a city in the world is almost ready for EV charging at that scale. So I think customers, as in terms of just look at owners, I see that, I don't know if Joe Gaspardoni is here or some people from the DICE Mafia here, but I think, what we're talking about there is definitely that owners have been making a lot of money. They're still making a lot of money doing nothing, right? So I think, it has to be about money. And I think, if technology companies can stop talking about AI and, understand, the KPIs of what buildings, meant to do. And so like, okay, we can actually help you achieve these faster, irrespective if it's digital twins or AI or metadata tagging or haystack or brick, it doesn't necessarily matter. I think that would go better. But so yes, I'm seeing it more and more that more companies are interested. But the funny thing is, it's here in Sweden, in the Nordics, and also from some parts in the US, it's actually more from the municipality side, from the public side, that they're asking more for these kind of things. But I'm not really sure if there are companies that can respond to exactly what they need. But I definitely see that more people are asking for digitalization. How can we do this? We see that we're so far behind. But then I think the industry still is working a lot in silos. We have, of course, those master systems integrators that try to do this, but it's again integrating a lot of the existing stuff instead of trying to solve maybe actual problems and not just the symptoms. So I definitely I want to see that things are happening, but at the same time, I'm too immersed in it maybe because I'm in all this digital twin consortium, I'm working with researchers and universities, so it's a little bit challenging. I want to see that it exists, and I think it could definitely happen more if we stop talking about technology and what the benefits that companies are looking for, and position it that way. To be honest,
So it's very much a transitional stage at the moment.
Yeah,
It's actually-
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. But I think like the reversibility of climate change, which I believe in, at least in climate crisis, I think those kind of things will drive this much, much faster. And again, combination with, these startups, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know if you refer to Catera, the construction startup that folded a couple of weeks ago. And I think, if you scrape the surface or understand why they failed, was because they acquired slowness. It was impossible for them. They tried to acquire an installed base. Well, that's exactly what they did, to be honest. They acquired an installed base to get access to markets and to customers. The problem was with all the customers as well as the companies that they acquired were too slow. And again, it's not the big that eat the small, it's the fast that eat the slow, right? So betting on silo-based something and just trying to tweak one of the things, it's not going to work. So I think, no, I'm pretty, hopeful. I see a lot of the startups, can do things 99% faster with, 1% of the manpower or woman power that exists in existing organizations. So I think, I'm pretty hopeful that things will actually go pretty well.
Yeah, they got the agility. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, I was going to ask the same question, Nicolas, too. And from the end user, customer, building owner, manager, property side, how much are you seeing, and sort of a repeat of Rogers a little bit, but are they really asking for AI and
No.
technologies, or are they asking for just do it better, faster, cheaper?
No. I think like a lot of companies are asking for AI, but I think that's as stupid as it gets, basically, right? Because what are the problems that you want to solve? That's sort of, or what is the problems that you want to solve, or what do you want to do more of? But on the other side, I think I see that a lot of companies are coming to me, and I just spoke, I think it was last week at Siemens Global Conference, that there are a lot of companies that want to do stuff, but they're not necessarily all the companies that know how to maybe leapfrog or use modern technologies to solve these existing ancient problems, right? Maybe you're using one new thing, but then you're stuck, you're using the same collaboration tools that you've always been using, you're using the same people, the same processes, and then just because you're using, a new shiny something, your organization is still working the same, right? So, no, I definitely see it more and more and more, but I think there's might be a lack of companies that can respond to how to solve these challenges in a more of a future ready way, right? Actually using like the agile company, so to say.
So
I see it.
hi, Nicolas. It's Steve Fay here.
Yep.
Haven't seen you in a while. So my fundamental question around AI in this industry is, what are the one or two things that are the use cases for where you see AI being solving a problem? Where do you see applying AI in this buildings world, where it's actually going to create value for everybody involved?
I think that's a great question. I think from if we separate buildings and organizations, that take care of the buildings. I think, AI definitely should be attacked everywhere. Again, like every problem, every process, everything that you do should be an AI first something. But that said, if you're looking at, from a commercial building or a critical infrastructure, we have a lot of things. Well, I think I wrote something about this. It's not that you have a lot of things, but there are a lot of variables, right? There are a lot of things that, tied together. And if you change something here, everything else is going to change and vice versa. So I think, getting these kind of relationships going, and I think like Passive Logic, I probably heard about them, and I think their approach to, their quantum abilities, et cetera, whatever that means, or the deep digital twins that they're working on. I think that's more, doing the stuff that we can't do as people, and I think, driving these buildings from a portfolio perspective much more efficiently, and not just talking about the actual buildings, but also sucking in a lot of the context, about the weather, the booking systems, and how to drive these kind of things. And not only, let's say, what do you call it, making the buildings aware of what they need to be aware of, but actually telling the buildings, okay, what, or like the buildings telling you, what should we do, or this is the most optimal solution. And I think Keith Gibson was here. He just says, you need a dog and a person to run the buildings of the future. The dog is supposed to bite the person because, they want to interact with the buildings. So I think, it starts right now. I see a lot of companies working in the energy space. And then you have, of course, the facility management aspects, and then you have the well-being side of things. But I think it's actually, if I look at, where it's lacking, it's not, necessarily, again, like the technology. It's a lot of the organizations, that exists in this space, as well as the channel structure, of course, in the US. But I mean, the organizations themselves, either, it's the CBRE, the ones that, manage real estate for someone else, or the owners' structures, or, I mean, again, like all the organizations, I think that's where I see a lot of AI, or again, more advanced methods or more modern technologies can be used to solve these problems, to approach this as well, right? And then,
So are
Yeah.
you suggesting that a CBRE or a JLL could actually reduce headcount in terms of building up, in terms of running facilities,
Yeah,
if they deploy AI technology in the analysis of the operation?
Yeah, of course. And I think like it's
Yeah.
again, it's going back to this, Ant Financial, right? With 11,000 people, they can service 720 million customers. Even that is
Mhm.
banking. It doesn't necessarily matter. And I think, these, again, like the legacy structure that exists in organizations, not just related to servicing buildings, it's outdated. And their business model is mostly about, how many people can we, put to be in charge of this building. It's not, using technology to solve actually a problem. So I think like it's everything in this industry is perpetuating, existing ways of working, and that, at some point this won't cut it. So I think, it's not only from a building perspective, it's not only from a BAS perspective, and then we have the lighting, we have the emergency, we have everything in a building. So I think like AI, we have to look at it, whatever the problems or whatever we want to do more of, forget about AI. I mean, how can modern tools help us solve this problem? And also asking, the Toyota way, why, and actually finding the root causes, so we wouldn't have to chase, symptoms and solving them during the whole life cycle. I think, we're stuck on, again, what I said before, if you look at construction companies, their technology as an afterthought. If we want to talk about smart buildings, I mean, is that a joke? I mean, we don't have the digital backbone for any buildings that is built to be able to perform as we want it to be. It's made to be a never-ending life cycle of band-aids, and if we don't recognize that, I mean, what the hell are we doing here? I think that's sort of, we need to recognize that. And I think, again, going back to all these kind of things, I think it's with BACnet, with interoperability, with more rich metadata tagging, with these kind of things where you can go in and hijack a lot of the stuff and create smarter buildings from a variety of systems. I think that's, where AI can come in, definitely. But it's, again, I don't know how much in these Monday Live sessions you talk about the whole building or focused on energy aspects or HVAC or BAS system. I don't know how much you talk about lighting, cybersecurity, your side, Steve, right? And all the other things in terms of tenant occupation, as well as the organizations that do financial stuff, all these kind of things. So I think, I think going back to, I think John or someone talked about it in the beginning, we're trained to look at the world in slices, right? I think everyone here maybe went to school at some point, and we're trained to look at the world in math, biology, mechanical, electrical, whatever that is. And then most of us, or some of us, spend a lifetime defending that, viewpoint, that slice of reality. And we become experts at it. We become domain experts or whatever. And that's what we're stuck with. The problem is that reality consists of a lot of different things. And that's why, the world is broken. It's not just building automation or construction. And we're trying to put that together right now. And that's AI's biggest problem. Everything has been separated. Everything has its own industry taxonomies, ontologies, whatever, all these kind of things, right? AI needs context. It needs everything to work with. Otherwise, you're never going to understand why this is happening, how this happened, and why this happened, all these kind of things, right? And from a building perspective, there are so many things to it. And if we're just catering again to the building automation side, that is phenomenal. But if we want to bring in all of these kind of things together to understand that from a totality, as well as, from a portfolio perspective, as well as from a smart city perspective, because buildings are fundamentally important in realizing the smart cities that today, I'm nowhere near what a smart city is. So it's fluffy, it's integration work that is, the biggest problem, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Sorry for going on a tangent here, but it's a fundamental problem.
So Nicholas, I was going to ask you a question, but what you just said kind of re-emphasizes why this question is important. We talk about silos a lot as being a problem, as being a barrier. And I think it's been mentioned, and since I joined this call by you and others, I'm intrigued to understand what your thoughts are in terms of the relationship of AI and silos. Is it a tool potentially that can create bridges across silos? Is it going to create another silo, or is it going to make silos disappear, or is there a relationship there that you anticipate?
No, absolutely. I think if you look at it right now, silos, of course, again, is the biggest barrier for AI. So data scientists are not data scientists, they're data custodians, or, they're cleaning data or data cleaners, whatever. That's what it's been like the last 10 years for the most part. And that's why, big companies or industries, we can't make it work together. New factories are being built where things are really, really smart in isolation, but nothing talks to each other, either in terms of people or systems. Pick one. AI as a silo, I think I don't know who said it, Roger, I think, we're in a transition phase right now, but I think, the cutting edge companies that I see from the Digital Twin Consortium, which you also are in, I think some of them have found that decoder ring that can bring silos together without, working with upfront data models, and can scan over these kind of things, respectively, if it's in buildings, energy, smart cities, automotive, whatever that is, where the data doesn't necessarily matter, and bring it into cohesion. But again, that's just that's just a fraction. So I think even though, the future is already here, it's very, very unevenly distributed. So I think through your response, I'm pretty much optimistic. It's not necessarily just AI, but it's a combination of digital twins, AI, BIM, whatever, IoT, all these kind of things together, which again are just modern tools. And if we apply modern tools, not just one or two, but all of them, understand what they can do, and apply that to solve actual problems, I see and I know that we can solve problems 99% faster than we do today, just by putting the right people together, right? And I think, over time, and I'm not talking about the next 200 years, the next 5 years, 10 years, AI is exponential. So we're definitely going to see more and more of this happening, and much, much faster than we've done before. So yes, I definitely see that AI, and again, more modern tools combined with more modern mindsets, has the ability to change things much, much faster than we traditionally would think. Do I fear that would end up in a silo? Yeah, maybe, but again, I don't know, if you put a kitchen knife in the wrong hands of someone, they're gonna be doing stupid things anyway, right? So I don't know.
I think, Nicholas, that, you touched on it earlier about, 11,000 people dealing with millions of people. And I think possibly where it's going to get traction is when people can use it as a competitive edge. They become more competitive from using the tools to service their customers better, and therefore can offer a more complete or competitive priced, sort of solution for their customers compared
Yeah.
with the traditional ways. And I think it's a little bit, but we're very slow to adopt that. I mean, even if you think about the facility management guys, still don't use tools to actually generate works orders, so they know that the right guy is going with the right part
Yeah.
when the alarm's generated. They're still there waiting for someone to call to tell them that it's getting hot or it's getting cold.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, we're throwing a lot of people at problems still, right? And if we're throwing people at problems, the tools that we equip them with are made for the past, not for the future, really. So I think, and especially in building automation or in buildings or real estate, it's again going back to owners as well as tenants, I guess, haven't really had an incentive to change. Now with COVID, I really see, or maybe I want to see, that there is a difference, that we need to attract more people to go back into buildings. And I mean, I talked to, what was his name? Brian, from is it Building IoT? Is that what they're called now, I think? And he basically said that,
He's on.
yeah, so I mean, there was a fantastic call, and he just said that they're not going to allow people to go back into their buildings until they can make sure that the well-being or the indoor climate is good enough, right? So I think that is interesting, because most real estate owners, they don't have a clue as to the status of their buildings. And now if tenants demand this, then of course it's a demand for more technology be put in the buildings, or more transparency for that sake. And I think that's something that's going to happen faster. And again, 2 to 3 work days on average, I guess now, is also going to drive a lot of, hopefully, efficiency. But we'll see. I mean, we'll see what happens.
So Mike just asked a question about workforce issues, and that's obviously a big deal in this industry. And I
Yeah.
guess there's kind of a little bit of a perception that AI is taking over humans, and therefore that's going to either solve things or create problems, depending on your perspective.
Yeah.
Which is obviously a sort of a Jetsons kind of view of AI, probably. What do you think is going to? What's the relationship of AI and workforce?
I mean, I want to say, creative destruction, right? It's going to destroy jobs. It's going to create new ones in its wake. And I think that's going to happen. But again, if you just have the equation, again, going back to, 11,000 people for 700 million, or if you have 1,000 people that can do the same job for the same amount of customers, right? So you're going to have 111,000 people that are without a job or in need of new jobs, so to say, right? So I think that there will be a lot of havoc in the markets, to be sure. And I think that's the problem. We're not looking at it from a planetary perspective, to see it's like we're protecting people, right? We're protecting existing industry dynamics. And I know in the US, you're bailing out companies, same here in Sweden, that probably should die at some point, but we don't do it because we protect the people and we protect the existing stuff. So I think, AI and these startups that will do this much, much faster. Again, doesn't mean have to be with AI, but just more modern tools, basically, and getting the problems done faster, or solving the problems done faster. I think there's bound to be a lot of turmoil. And if you don't have like a social system, and of course I'm from Sweden, so we got a pretty good social welfare, system that can absorb these changes, then that's going to be even more problematic, because there's going to be mass unemployment. It's going to happen. I'm not sure. I mean, and at some point, of course, it's going to be. I think you're referring to Jetsons. I'm that old, at least, Hanna-Barbera, flying stuff, and all these kind of things, right? So, I mean, at some point, of course, it's going to be that. If you look 20 years into the future, or 40 years into the future, or 100 years into the future, we can survive. But again, we got the planet on the other side that we're just, we're digging up stuff. We only have 3% of wild animals left. The rest of the animals is there for us to eat, and all these kind of things, right? So I think it's I want AI, I want more modern tools to obliterate waste, and if waste is accompanied with protecting an industry that won't change and throwing people at problems, I mean, so be it. I'm not going to protect people for the sake of the planet and future generations just because someone's going to get paid, unfortunately.
That's a
That's
political
my
statement.
perspective.
That's a political statement.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, like, I see that's, holding industries back, efficiency, and it's bound to happen. So, but yeah, I mean, yeah, of course it is. Of course. But again, I've got kids. I don't know if you do, but I mean, like, I want their outlook of life and the ease of, getting jobs or houses or the work market. I mean, it's not as fantastic as it was, maybe 50 years ago. It's not as easy. And I think, we owe it to future generations to do our part, right? And not just protect ourselves in the hopes that we're gonna have our jobs, 5 more years, just keep that, modern technologies at bay, because it's just, surf the waves instead of, being, crushed underneath the wave that is here already.
So a lot of technologies have a sort of a breakthrough moment, right? When it starts to get adopted.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to sort of figure out what the breakthrough moment is for AI in the context of buildings. Because when I think about where AI comes into my life right now, it's kind of like Google is figuring out which pictures I prefer.
Yeah, or like e-commerce or all smart algorithms.
E-commerce behind the scenes, I don't actually see that, right? But when
Exactly.
when I see a good picture and I don't see the bad ones, I know because I'm a techie that AI has got involved there.
Yeah.
What do you think could be the sort of the breakthrough moment of AI in buildings?
No, but aren't we already seeing it? I don't know if some people are here from the energy side. I mean, I think there are so many companies right now that are utilizing weak AI or some kind of AI or machine learning or whatever approach to do the things faster. And they can do that thanks to, BACnet and Haystack and all these kind of things that come before it. It's because they have much more rich metadata tagging. I mean, John, maybe you can answer this one, working with your platforms, and you've seen this industry before. I think, AI is already here at some perspective. So I think, it depends on how we see it, but I think it's going to come from, existing industry dynamics, working with, what do you call it? Energy perspective first. And then it's going to transition into, the 330-300 rule, right? Or actually, maybe it's going to skip the 30 and move to the 300 because of COVID right now. So it's going to come from energy. Facility management is still going to be behind because CBRE and the ones, operating buildings today are doing it. And sorry for all the CBRE people that might be listening in the future, I don't know, but throwing a lot of people at these problems. But well-being right now, after COVID, during COVID, post-COVID, whatever, they're going to drive more awareness around well-being, productivity issues for tenants as well as owners, right? So I think like energy perspective as well as well-being, and then people that have buildings and operate buildings as well as tenants in buildings, they're going to see that the ones that can't manage this will, they're going to move somewhere else, right? So I'm hoping that's going to be the case. I don't know if that responds to the question, but I think like what Ken always says, right? I mean, technology should be seamless, exactly what you said as well, Anto. I mean, you shouldn't be able to, hey, I'm an AI-driven building. Okay,
it should be seamless, but you see the benefits eventually at some point.
Yeah, I mean, the benefits are that you don't think about it.
Yeah,
right?
which
Yeah. So, I think, and again, like the best user interface or the best app is not an app at all, right? So I think, now with conversation and analytics, with AI, with digital twins, a lot of these kind of things in terms of virtual reality, augmented reality, which again might sound super scary, but they're just like tools for collaboration, right? So we could be sitting here, if you, Anto or maybe Ken, if you would scan your building, turn that into, sort of a lightweight digital twin, you can invite us into your building. We can sit around there and talk in virtual reality instead, because that's what, what other companies are doing right now, adopting new technology to solve problems much, much faster, right? So here we are at Teams, whilst we could be sitting using virtual reality instead. Is that too much? I don't know. Are companies doing it today? Of course they are.
So a question from Sudha about AI ethics.
Yeah.
especially in the area of interpreting human emotions and what humans do, which is, I guess, a lot of AI opportunities in buildings is related to that.
Yeah.
Where is that in the AI conversation?
I mean, I think again, like AI is still, people are just struggling to get data out. People are struggling to get data out of silos. So ethics, the ones that are at the cutting edge, of course, working in the automotive space or maybe healthcare or with facial recognition and these kind of things, they have to, of course, think about it. And of course, it has been a problem. But as everything else, I say AI first instead of API first, because we need to think about, again, how we can prepare for AI, the best way possible. But then, of course, ethics has to be in there from the beginning, because if you have it as an afterthought, yeah, it's not going to go really well, right? And it also becomes, a problem. I mean, of course, probably you all know that, with the data sets that you already have, that can be skewed to some, perspective from someone else based on the ones who did the original data sampling. So to be able, again, if we go back to digital twins, where you have the digital thread, that is super, super important to understand exactly, where everything is coming from, and it doesn't turn into a black box. So I think, IBM, they're doing some fantastic work in providing visibility into a lot of the black box that is happening when you're creating AI algorithms and all these kind of things, and also at the edge, which of course is a benefit for local control first in building automation. But I mean, again, it needs to be there much, much sooner rather than later, of course. But I think for most companies in the building automation space, it's not, top of mind, because you don't have an idea where the data is, how to get it out. And there are a lot of steps beforehand, so to say, in how to approach AI, which I don't think it's great, but I think that's just what it is.
We have time for one more question. Anybody have a...
Jim, you don't have a question? I see you looking at me.
Everybody's looking at you.
Yeah, I know, but it's a stern look.
No, I wasn't trying to be a stern look. I'm sorry, I was on another session and just jumped in, but I'm just taking it all in. No questions right now.
Okay,
Thanks.
fair enough.
So maybe you want to wrap this up, Nicolas, a minute before.
Is anyone today, I got a question for all of you. I mean, they're only the one that I see, and maybe from the audience as well. I mean, are you working with AI today? And if so, like, how are you working with it? Or is it more, machine learning, or is it, what is the awareness? And again, like the stuff that I said, is it too far-fetched? Is it relevant? I have no idea, to be honest.
You should have asked that at the beginning.
yeah, maybe.
I think one of the problems is, what's the definition of AI? Is pattern recognition AI? Then we've been using it. Is machine learning AI? Right? There's so many subcategories. I think that's part of the challenge. As you say, our industry is trying to adopt these technologies. Well, they can do fantastic things, but none of them do everything for every application. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges, is the industry gaining a working knowledge. It doesn't mean be a data science, a working knowledge of what tools can solve which jobs, right? If I need to fix something on my car, I know what tool I need, okay? AI, okay, what tool out of that toolkit is appropriate for problem A, B, C, or D, or E? I think that the industry has a ways to go for people to even be able to choose from those tools to apply them to the problems we face generally in the built environment.
I think just to augment that, John, I think the true metric of, is anyone using AI? Are you employing people who are versant in the technologies and stuff, right? Do you have engineers and software people who are trained in it or brought up or straight out of college? I think that's one of the metrics that we use about, are you doing AI? Okay, how many engineers have you got? If you look at a metric I just saw the other day from JLLT, the technology group, they're putting on just a huge amount of data scientists, AI engineers. They got recs out for like 20 to 30 of these guys. When you start, I think you need to start in those areas, right? How many people you've got working on it? Is it an afterthought, or is it something you're focused on?
And it's interesting you talk about JLL, because it's it can be, AI can be built in at the construction phase, but quite honestly, you don't have anything until the building's been occupied, and then you're actually getting data. So it's all about the services afterwards and the experience of running a building and actually having all that information to actually start creating, you know, the right algorithms to make it work. So I think we're still in that time lock of where we're still picking up the data to create the AI, I think.
Yeah, but I think just to talk to John's point about picking up the right tools, you need trained people who know how to use those tools, right, as well. I mean, that's part of the equation.
Okay, so
I think we're seeing a little bit of a growth back from the edge too, that again, back maybe not artificial intelligence, but additional intelligence is becoming part of the edge devices. And it's often information that we don't traditionally have in our industry, such as location services and stuff. So I'm seeing little bits of it being adopted and put out there on the edge, and then it starts to affect our databases. This whole idea of the building being artificially intelligent, I do not believe, but I think it is starting to grow in that direction, and I'm starting to see it growing from the edge in.
Yeah.
okay, we need to bring it to a wrap. I'm just seeing a comment from Keith that is actually quite interesting. One thing that AI can do is to eliminate bias. That's obviously something that we all suffer as humans. We have bias. I don't know.
Oh, that's
maybe
actually not true.
You can program in bias. You can program in bias.
Google had a recruiting AI engine that they had to shut down. That was terribly biased.
Yeah.
Right. All right. So with that, let's wrap it up. Thank you, John, for taking care of the beginning of the show. Appreciate that. And thank you, everybody, for being here. Thanks, Nicholas, coming all the way from Sweden. And thanks.
Looks like I'm in San Francisco, but I'm not.
Oh, yes, San Francisco. And thanks, everybody. And we'll put a video of this up on YouTube by tomorrow. And we'll see you next week on Monday Live.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks, Nicholas.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, Nicholas.
Bye-bye.
Article
Bye-bye.
coming?
Thanks, Nicholas.